He walked in, owning the building. She told him to leave. 5 minutes later, her entire world flipped. The front doors slid open with a hiss. Julian Mercer stepped inside, his polished shoes clicking softly on the tiled floor of Braylock Systems, a rising tech company tucked into the edge of downtown Columbus, Ohio. Morning sun bounced off the steel and glass walls of the lobby, a sleek, modern space, the kind designed to impress. He walked with quiet purpose, not hurried, not too slow, just a man who knew where he was going. Crisp navy blazer, light gray slacks, clean white shirt, no tie. Sharp beard. He looked like money, but not the loud kind. Julian paused at the receptionist's desk. Behind it sat a woman typing with one hand and scrolling with the other. Blonde bob, business casual blouse, chunky necklace, and an attitude that hit before she even spoke. She didn't look up. "Good morning," Julian said, his voice smooth and low. "I'm here to meet with the executive team." She sighed like he'd just asked her to run a marathon. Still didn't look at him. "Delivery entrance is on the side," she replied, waving a finger toward a hallway to her left. "This entrance is for employees only." "I'm not delivering anything," Julian said, still calm. "I have a meeting. Mercer, Julian Mercer." That got her to glance up. Her eyes scanned him, but not in a friendly way, more like she was trying to figure out what he was doing in a place like this. She narrowed her eyes. "And who exactly are you meeting with?" "The board." Her laugh was quick and sharp. "The board doesn't meet with people without appointments." "I scheduled one," Julian replied. "Not on the calendar," she shot back, tapping her keyboard without checking anything. "So, like I said, you'll need to leave, or try the side entrance." A few heads turned in the lobby. A group of young employees by the elevator smirked. A man in a polo shirt with a laptop bag slowed down just enough to eavesdrop before pretending to check his phone. Julian's jaw tightened, just a little, not enough to snap, but enough to feel it. "I'd appreciate it," he said, "if you could double-check." But she just went back to typing like he wasn't there. "I'm going to make a call," Julian said, stepping aside. Still, she didn't respond. He pulled out his phone, moved toward a large potted plant near the seating area, and dialed. Spoke in a low tone. No anger, no frustration, just clarity. And then he waited. He stood there, not pacing, not fidgeting, just waiting. Eyes calmly observing the space around him. It wasn't about ego. It was about being used to moments like this, used to being underestimated. 2 minutes passed, then 3. At minute 5, the elevator dinged. A man in a tailored suit sprinted out. Rick Dawson, VP of Operations. Tall, balding, frantic. He looked around wildly. "Where is he?" Rick barked. "Where's Mr. Mercer?" The receptionist frowned. "Mr. Mercer? Who?" Rick's eyes landed on Julian, who hadn't moved an inch. His face dropped. "Oh my God. Mr. Mercer, I am so sorry." He rushed over and extended a hand. Julian shook it, cool and professional. The receptionist's face turned ghost white. "Wait, what?" she asked. "He's... who?" Rick turned to her, eyes bulging. "This is Julian Mercer, the majority shareholder. He owns this place." Silence swallowed the room. The smirking kids by the elevator froze. The man with the laptop bag blinked and shuffled away. The air felt thick now, heavy with embarrassment and tension. "I didn't know," the receptionist stammered. "No one told me. He didn't." Julian looked at her, still calm, still composed. "You didn't ask." But this was only the beginning. Rick led Julian through the glass security doors like a man walking a tightrope with no net. His voice kept pitching between nervous and apologetic. We had no idea you'd be coming in person," Rick stammered. "Usually these meetings are virtual or through the holding firm. There was just no notice." Julian glanced at him sideways. That was the point. They walked past open workspaces, modern meeting rooms, big LED displays, flashing productivity metrics. Braylock Systems prided itself on its forward-thinking culture. Innovation, inclusion, transparency, the buzzwords were everywhere. On posters, in internal memos, on mugs at the coffee bar. And yet, one of the interns, a young guy in a retro hoodie, nudged his deskmate as they passed. Whispered something under his breath. Julian caught the glance, the shared smirk. He said nothing. Rick kept talking to fill the silence. We've actually been really excited about your involvement. The board's mentioned you a few times, of course, but they never met me, Julian cut in. Right, well, no, not directly. Julian didn't stop walking. It's easier to stereotype someone you've never looked in the eye. Rick swallowed hard. Yeah. They reached the elevator to the executive floor. Rick tapped his badge. The doors slid open. Silence settled in as they rode up. Rick cleared his throat but didn't speak again. Julian stared straight ahead. Upstairs, the boardroom buzzed with low conversation. 4 executives, 2 senior analysts, 1 legal counsel. All white, all older. They stopped mid-sentence when Julian entered. Mr. Mercer, said the woman at the head of the table, Tessa Rollins, CEO. Her voice was friendly, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. We weren't expecting you this morning. That was intentional, Julian replied, taking the empty seat at the end of the table. I wanted to see how things operate when no one's putting on a show. An uncomfortable silence followed. One of the analysts shifted in his chair. Julian placed a small notebook on the table. No laptop, no assistant, no fanfare. Just notes, written by hand. I've had eyes on this company for months, quietly, observing, watching decisions get made, watching how people are treated, watching how culture trickles down from this room to the lobby. No one moved. Rick stood awkwardly near the door, unsure if he was supposed to stay or run. Julian didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. When a man who owns 51% of your company walks through the front door, Julian said slowly, and gets told to leave without a second glance, that says something, doesn't it? Tessa tried to smile again. That was clearly a misunderstanding. We'll address it internally. It's not about her, Julian said, eyes steady. It's about what you've built, or what you've allowed. He let the sentence hang, then turned his notebook open. The numbers are fine, revenue's up, product development is decent, but the culture? He shook his head. Rotten. One of the executives, Carl Brenner, head of HR, leaned forward. With all due respect, Mr. Mercer, we've implemented a number of inclusion initiatives. Julian held up a hand. I don't want to hear about initiatives. I want to talk about impact, the real kind. Like whether anyone in this building feels safe calling out bias, whether front desk staff are trained to do more than scan skin tone and clothing, whether your teams reflect the people who use your products or just the people you feel comfortable hiring. Tessa bristled slightly. You're implying we're prejudiced? Julian raised an eyebrow. I'm stating a fact. She opened her mouth again, but this time Rick cleared his throat. Actually, Rick said, his voice small, we've had some complaints, internally, from staff who didn't feel heard, especially the junior ones. Tessa shot him a look, but Rick didn't back down. Julian nodded slowly. That's what I thought. He stood. I'll be meeting with department leads one-on-one today, then with staff, all levels. I want transparency, and I want honesty, not the packaged version, the truth. He looked around the room. And after that, I'll decide what stays and what doesn't. No one dared speak, but downstairs, a storm was already forming. Back on the first floor, the receptionist, Dana Price, sat stiff at her desk. The security guard, who usually kept to himself, had repositioned his chair, closer than usual. Employees passed by without making eye contact. A few whispered, a few stared, then quickly looked away. The same people who'd smiled at her every morning were suddenly pretending she didn't exist. Dana's fingers hovered over her keyboard. She hadn't typed a thing in 15 minutes. She kept thinking back to the man's face, Julian Mercer. The moment Rick had said his name, her entire body had flushed hot, then cold. He hadn't yelled, hadn't threatened. He'd just looked at her. And that, somehow, was worse. She replayed it over and over. The way she dismissed him. How she waved him off like he was bothering her. No part of her had even considered that he could be someone important, let alone the owner of the entire company. Her stomach turned. She leaned toward her monitor, clicked into the internal chat system, and sent a message to HR. Dana Price, can I speak with someone as soon as possible? A typing bubble appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. HR coordinator, Maria Lynn. Come up to the 12th floor, quiet room 3A, 10 minutes. Dana grabbed her badge, muttered something about a quick break, and slipped away. Upstairs, Julian sat in a small, unmarked conference room, this time with the door wide open. His assistant, Khalid, had just arrived from the airport. Neatly dressed, early 30s, always 2 steps ahead. Pulled the internal metrics, Khalid said, laying down a tablet. Turnover in customer service and QA is nearly double the industry average. Exit interviews mention burnout, lack of career growth, and poor team leadership. Also, he hesitated. What? Julian asked. Whistleblower emails, 2 in the past 4 months. One was flagged and buried. The other got passed around like gossip. No formal investigation. Julian took the tablet and scrolled. Lines of text, specific names, complaints that were brushed off, people who tried to speak up and got ignored or pushed out. He exhaled slowly. Same story, different building. You want me to line up the department heads? No, Julian said. I want to talk to the employees first, without the middlemen. He stood and headed toward the elevators. Meanwhile, Dana sat across from Maria Lynn in a quiet room with no windows. A box of tissues sat in the middle of the table, like it already knew what kind of conversations happened here. I messed up, Dana said. I didn't mean to, but I know I did. Maria kept her voice neutral. What happened exactly? Dana looked down at her hands. This man came in. I thought he was delivering something. I didn't check the system, didn't ask questions, just assumed. Why? Dana hesitated. I don't know. No, she said. He just didn't look like someone meeting with the board. Maria didn't blink. What does that look like? Dana winced. I didn't mean it like that. But that's how it came out. A pause. I panicked, Dana admitted. I didn't want to be wrong, so I just shut it down. Maria nodded slowly. It wasn't just about a calendar check. It was about the way you spoke to him. I know, Dana said quietly. Maria tapped her pen on the pad. And now? I want to apologize, Dana said. Not because I got caught, because I was wrong. Maria studied her face as if trying to figure out how much of that was real. I'll see what I can do, she said, but it may not change anything. Dana swallowed. I understand. But while Dana braced for a conversation, Julian was already planning something much bigger. Julian stood before a room packed with employees. It wasn't a flashy event space or one of those sleek lounges the company used for team-building photos, just a plain, neutral conference room with stackable chairs and humming lights. About 40 employees had filed in, some curious, some nervous, some visibly skeptical. No podium, no slideshow. Julian leaned lightly on the edge of a table, notebook in one hand, pen in the other. I'm not here for a speech, he said plainly. I'm here for the truth. A few people shifted in their seats. I'm Julian Mercer. I own 51% of this company. I'm not a tech guy. I'm not a startup investor chasing the next headline. I invest in people, but I can't do that if people are being silenced, overlooked, or pushed out. That caught some attention. I don't care about your buzzwords. I care about how safe you feel, how respected you are, how long you've been waiting for someone in charge to give a damn. The room went quiet. Even the skeptical ones sat up straighter now. Julian nodded toward a young woman near the front. What's your name? Carmen, she said, early 20s, tight curls pulled back, shoulders tense. What's your role here, Carmen? Customer support lead, been here a little over a year. Julian nodded. Tell me something honest. Anything. Carmen hesitated, then let out a shaky breath. Most of us on the support team don't feel like we matter. We bring up issues, we ask for help, and it gets shrugged off. Sometimes they tell us they're working on it, but nothing changes. Julian scribbled in his notebook. You ever get recognition from upper management? She gave a bitter laugh. Only when someone messes up. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. He turned to a man on the other side, mid-30s, button-up shirt, badge clipped to his belt. And you? I'm Jaden, QA analyst. Been here 5 years, trained half my team. They brought in 2 new hires last month. Both make more than I do. I found out by accident. Julian didn't react, just kept writing. Someone in the back raised a hand. Go ahead, Julian said. It was a woman in a hijab, soft-spoken but clear. Why now? Why are you doing this now? Julian paused before answering. Because yesterday I walked into this building and the person at the front desk looked at me like I didn't belong. And no one said a word, not to defend me, not to question her, not to ask what I needed. His voice didn't rise. It dropped lower. And the worst part? I wasn't surprised. Silence again. I've walked into boardrooms and been mistaken for catering. I've been followed by security in buildings I own. I've had people hand me their trash because they assumed I was there to clean. A few people looked down at their laps. Others nodded slowly. I didn't come here today to punish anyone. I came to remind you what accountability looks like. The door opened. Dana stepped in, her face pale, hands wringing a notebook of her own. Julian looked over, eyes steady. I'm not here to humiliate you, he said, but I think we both know this conversation involves you too. Dana took a hesitant step forward. The room watched her, judged her, measured her. I made a mistake, she said quietly. I treated someone badly, someone who deserved my respect. Not because of his title, but because he's a person. She looked at Julian directly now. I'm sorry. Deeply. Julian didn't smile, but he gave a small nod. That matters. But it's not just about me. It's about what you do next. He turned back to the room. That goes for all of you. But Julian knew words weren't enough. Not anymore. The real work was still coming. Later that afternoon, Julian sat alone in the CEO's office. Not his office. Tessa Rollins. She'd left 20 minutes earlier after what he described calmly as a necessary conversation. The room still carried her perfume, faint and artificial, like someone trying too hard to hide something. He looked out the wide window across the Columbus skyline, arms crossed. Below, employees walked between buildings, heads down, phones out, coffee cups in hand. Business as usual, but not for long. The door opened. Khalid stepped in without a word and placed a manila folder on the desk. This is it? Julian asked. Khalid nodded. Complete audit. Salaries, promotions, complaints. How they were handled or weren't. Julian opened the folder. Pages flipped quickly through his fingers. Same managers promoted over and over. Lateral moves for women and staff of color while others climbed fast. Pay gaps so wide you could drive a truck through them. Anonymous HR complaints that vanished quietly after internal review. He didn't flinch, didn't sigh. This wasn't new to him. He'd seen it before. Too many times. But knowing didn't make it hurt less. You good? Khalid asked quietly. I'm always good, Julian said. Doesn't mean I'm okay with any of this. He closed the folder. Start the termination process, he said. I want a clean break. How many? Start with 7. Tessa, Carl from HR, the head of hiring, a few directors who've been coasting under the radar. The names are in the notes. Khalid didn't argue. You want statements prepared? No, I'll speak for myself. He leaned back in the chair that didn't belong to him. Not yet. But it might. Soon. Downstairs, word spread fast. Emails started bouncing back from deactivated accounts. Office doors were locked by lunchtime. People whispered in hallways, stared at each other in elevators, speculated over Slack channels they assumed weren't being monitored. Did you hear about Carl? Gone. Just like that. Tessa, too. She was crying when she left. No way. You serious? Straight to the parking garage. Didn't even say goodbye. Some were nervous. Some were smug. Others, quietly hopeful. A product designer named LaTanya Fields sent an email to her team. Subject line, maybe this is the start of something better. By 3:30 p.m., Julian was back on the executive floor. The conference room he'd used earlier was now filled with department leads, people who'd mostly kept their heads down when it mattered. He didn't sit this time. I've made some decisions, he began. They're not about revenge. They're about values. If you knew what was happening and said nothing, that's a choice. If you saw people being passed over and ignored it, that's a choice. If you sat in silence while others got mistreated, don't act shocked that silence has consequences. No one moved, no one argued. Most of them had already seen the emails. I'm not interested in token gestures or empty statements. I'm interested in real leadership, starting now. He handed out a printed memo. No fluff. Just 3 clear objectives. Full salary, transparency across every department, a 90-day equity and culture overhaul, with employee input, not just leadership. Anonymous feedback lines that bypass HR and go straight to ownership. "I'm not asking for perfection," Julian said. "I'm asking for accountability from the top down." Someone finally spoke up. A middle-aged woman from operations, Monica Reyes. "What if we're willing to do better?" she asked. "Actually better, not just pretend." Julian looked at her, eyes steady. "Then you'll still be here." But for those who weren't ready to grow, the exits were already waiting. By the end of the week, the story had already left the building. Someone from IT, no one knew who, leaked an internal memo to a local journalist. Then someone else sent screenshots from the Slack thread where Julian's name was first dropped. Within hours, it hit the web. The headline was simple, blunt, and already going viral. Black CEO told to get lost by Receptionist. Minutes later, he shuts the entire company down. It wasn't accurate, not entirely. Julian hadn't shut the company down. He'd cleaned it out, reset it. But the internet didn't care about nuance. The headline was too good. It hit Reddit, Twitter, and LinkedIn all at once. Some people cheered, some tried to twist the story into something ugly. But the part that hit the hardest was the footage. Security camera footage, just a few seconds long. Julian standing in the lobby, being waved off. Dana's hand in the air, her mouth saying the words no one needed to hear. Julian standing still, then stepping aside to make that one quiet phone call. That video was enough. Millions of views, thousands of comments. "This is why you treat everyone with respect. I hope she learned something, and I hope we all do too." Imagine how many people we dismiss every day based on nothing but bias. Somewhere in the middle of it all, Dana went silent. She deleted her profiles, shut off her phone. She wasn't fired, but she wasn't front desk anymore either. Julian had offered her another position, behind the scenes, away from people, for a few months. It was up to her if she wanted to come back after that. The following Monday, Julian stood in the very same lobby where it all began. No cameras, no press, just him and Khalid. No one else even noticed he was there. They watched the morning rush pass through, coffee in hand, scanning key cards, nodding at familiar faces. A few glanced toward Julian, unsure if they should say something. One woman stopped. Carmen, from customer support. "I read your memo," she said. "The one about the employee council. I'm in." Julian smiled. "Good." She started to walk away, then turned back. "I didn't expect any of this to matter. Not really. But it did." He gave a slight nod. "It always does. You just need someone who's listening." She walked off, a little taller than before. Julian turned to Khalid. "Let's go." As they walked out, Julian paused by the reception desk. A young black man was behind it now, early 20s, friendly smile, crisp polo shirt. He stood as soon as Julian approached. "Mr. Mercer," he said. "Good morning. Can I help with anything?" Julian smiled. "Nope. Just making sure you've got what you need." The young man nodded. "We're good down here." Julian held his gaze for a second, then gave a small tap on the desk and walked off. Weeks passed, then months. The company didn't crash. It didn't implode. It didn't vanish. It got better. Slowly. Meetings looked different. Teams had more voices at the table. Quiet ones, brown ones, overlooked ones. The receptionist desk rotated team members weekly, so no one sat at the bottom of the chain for too long. Carmen ended up chairing the new employee advisory board. Jaden from QA finally got the raise he'd earned years ago. And Dana, quiet, private, humbler now, still showed up. She didn't talk much, but she listened. And when someone came in through the front doors, she was never the first to assume. As for Julian, he didn't make many public appearances. He stayed in the background, watching, listening, protecting the culture he demanded from day one. Not because he needed to be in the spotlight, but because leadership is louder when it moves in silence. Life doesn't always give you a second chance to correct a mistake. Sometimes it gives you one shot and someone like Julian Mercer standing in front of you. So here's the truth. How you treat people when you think they have nothing to offer says everything about who you really are. Don't wait for a headline to wake you up. Be better now. And if this story hit home, share it with someone who needs the reminder, because we all do, sometimes.